the All right, well, thank you all for joining us for International Education Week. Today we have Brian Dowdle joining us from the World
Languages and Cultures, World Competencies.
World Languages and Cultures department here on campus, and he's going to give a short presentation on the World Competencies Certificate. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to him.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. It's kind of exciting to talk about world competencies at the University of Montana. And I should point out that the subtitle, Preparing UM Students for the World's Problems, I think is actually at the heart of UM's education. And maybe we could replace World Competency Certificate with the University of Montana, Preparing Students for the World's Problems. And I say that because I don't feel today that I'm teaching you or telling you this is something you should do. I think this is something that students are already doing. And in fact, this type of certificate is actually baked into the University of Montana's general education program. Most of the courses that will satisfy this certificate are already part of UM, and many of the activities we're going to ask you to participate in to satisfy the activities requirements for this certificate are the things that as students you're already doing naturally, or things that you aspire to. So in a way, this certificate is designed to give structure and a bit of an incentive for you to continue to do the things you already are doing, the things you want to do. So the structure is how it's set up with the different required courses and activities, and the incentive is that it gives you a certificate. And as a certificate, it's designed to be stackable and interact with other certificates and certificate programs that exist on campus. So that brings me to a big question. Where are we? Well, obviously we're on Earth, but if you look around across campus of the University of Montana, you will see words like global, international, and world used sometimes interchangeably and sometimes with a slightly different nuance. And you can see this in the names of different programs as well. So there's the Global Leadership Program, GLI, Global Leadership Initiative, International Development Studies, and we're adding to it with World Competencies. And I think that all three of these generally point to the same ideas, something big, something beyond campus. A point of difference might be that sometimes there are global problems, there are world problems, there are international problems that have a very local component to them. So if we're thinking about trash, for instance, this is a worldwide problem. But you can understand that global problem by traveling to the local dump here in Missoula and going through the trash receipt. There's things that say made in China, made in Mexico, made in the USA, and kind of begin to put together an understanding of this worldwide problem by staying local. And so that's one aspect of international and global and world, is that these problems are here with us today and we can respond to them today. But I also think they point us beyond campus to the larger world, where we can see that the ways we're experiencing the problems are actually kind of unique. And the solutions that we are trying are not the only solutions that are being tried and not the only approaches that might be useful for us. So in introducing the idea of world competencies, I should say that I'm influenced by a program that comes out of the Asia Society that they entitled Global Competencies. We've changed it to world competencies so we don't interfere with the other certificates on campus, but really we're borrowing the idea that global competencies, world competencies, has 4 domains, 4 areas. So let's look at these one at a time. We're going to talk about investigating the world, recognizing perspectives, communicating ideas, and then hopefully taking action. And this last one is perhaps a bit intimidating, but I think we're already doing a lot of that here at UM. And you can do it in many ways through many different career paths and disciplines. So let's start with investigating the world. So globally competent students are aware, curious, and interested in learning about the world and how it works. So I'd like to focus on the word curious. Perhaps that's not a term we've thought of since we were kids and we heard about Curious George, who was always getting into trouble with the man in the yellow hat, but I think it's a good skill to have and something that we want to kind of develop within ourselves. Oftentimes when we get to campus, we have a clear idea of what we want to major in, the job we want to get, and we see that direct path and we ignore everything around us and just go for it. And that makes sense, but sometimes we might lose our curiosity. Every class should present us with a set of questions, a set of challenges that if we're really curious about, will take us in new directions and lead us to think about things beyond the curriculum and start making our college education connected to the entire world around us. And so as you are taking classes, continue to be aware of the problems and interested in them, but maintain your curiosity and keep learning about the world and how it works. Next, students recognize, globally competent students recognize perspectives. They recognize that they have a particular perspective that may or may not be shared, and it might be unique. So for many of our students here at the University of Montana, we come from smaller towns. And just coming to Missoula, we've encountered people who see the world quite differently than we do. If you talk to your classmates, you'll see that they have a different perspective. Now imagine if you were able to travel around the world and meet others. How different might their perspective be? And how might their perspective inform yours, strengthen yours, help it become more complete and understand the world better? And it also should instill in us a little bit of humility, that we are not the only ones to face these global challenges, and we're not the only ones who are working to solve them. And with that humility, we can begin to work together with others. The fourth domain is communicating ideas. Globally competent students can effectively communicate verbally and non-verbally with diverse audiences. And I should mention that this might include doing so in a foreign language, which could be a little bit scary, but if we're going to work to solve global problems, your partners are going to be from around the world, and you need to be able to at least approach them in their language. So taking a side step and looking at communicating ideas, this is also the key of the liberal arts degree. You want to be able to communicate in writing and communicate to your boss, future employers, your coworkers and customers, and also to those all around the world. So as you're taking your classes, realize that sometimes the things you're communicating are less important than the communication practice itself. You may never be in a class, you may never have a job discussing the American Revolution, but your presentation skills in that class could help you in your regular job to sell widgets or whatever it is you end up doing. The final area is taking action. Globally competent students have the skills and the knowledge not just to learn about the world, but also to make a difference in the world. And this brings me back to what you're already doing here at the University of Montana. We're trying to understand the world's problems and solve them. And you can do it in very small ways. But if you aren't curious about the world, if you don't recognize the perspectives of others, and you aren't interested in communicating with them and engaging with them, it can be a lot harder to do. You should definitely understand that we're not alone in trying to tackle these world challenges. And if we connect with our counterparts around the world, we'll have a much better chance of taking action and saving the planet and solving some of these really challenging problems that face us. So the World Competencies Certificate has 4 components to it. First is a language requirement. Next, a cultural studies requirement, then global and regional issues requirement, and then an activities requirement. Let's look at these together. Let's look at these separately. So first, the language requirement is 4 semesters in a foreign language. Many of you have studied a language before coming to college, and you only plan on taking the minimum amount to finish a general education course. Don't do this to your future self. Somewhere in you is a 40-year-old who wishes they had spent a little more time learning Spanish. Somewhere in you is a 50-year-old who wishes they had learned French. So take 4 semesters, go beyond the 2-semester general education requirement to get a stronger foundation in language that will change your thinking and change your life. If it's just a box you check at school, I think your future self will regret it. So you need 4 semesters of a foreign language. And as I said, it's part of the general education requirement. It's just 1 year more. Next, there's a cultural studies requirement. And these courses can be taught in English or taught in a foreign language. And it has to be on the culture of another country, region, or even a religious tradition. The cultural studies requirement also satisfies a general education requirement in most classes. Next is a global and regional issues requirement. So basically, this is any course at UM that addresses an issue with a strong regional or global lens. You should look into your own major to find classes that bring the problems home to an area of the world. Finally, and this is the part that I'm the most excited about, are the activities requirements. Now, there's no credit associated with these activity requirements, but I think they will be the most rewarding. First, you need to complete a programmatic international experience. Ideally, that would be a 1-year study abroad, but not everyone has time in their schedule or the wherewithal to do that. So a single semester would be great. Or if your major has an international experience that you're participating in, that's great. Travel alone won't do it. It needs to be engaged in an academic pursuit internationally. Next, you need to participate in 8 campus or community events with an international theme. Campus is full of international activities, and so is the community here in Missoula. Many of you will attend a few of these on your own, but if you understand that taken together within this global framework, they can really become a core part of your education. So take your curiosity from your classes and apply it to the activities and events on campus. Communicate with the presenters and with the guests on campus, and understand that their perspectives are beyond yours and should shape your perspectives and make your learning experience here at UM richer and more able to help you solve these global problems and take action. So once again, you have a language requirement, cultural studies requirement, global issues course, and an activities requirement. Half of these are your gen ed or a little bit more, and the rest are free for you to choose. But as I said, our goal is to give you a structure and an incentive to do the things you already want to do, the things that you are hoping to do through your education here at UM. And also, maybe a future you will be happy that you develop these competencies and we're able to use them beyond the required classroom experience. Thank you, and we'll now turn to questions. Yes?
I have a question, Brian, and maybe I should know this already, but how, so when students decide they want to go for the certificate, how are they tracking that? Do we have something, a mechanism set up on campus where they track
We
that?
don't have a mechanism just yet, but what we'll likely be doing is having a Moodle shell that students who are going to do the certificate will enroll in, and each of the 8 campus activities will be listed as an assignment. To complete the assignment, you'll click on it, write the name of the activity, the date, and just a 1 or 2 sentence summary of it. Also, you can do, there'll be the same thing for the international programmatic experience.
Okay.
Then we will be able to make sure that students are getting out their experience in campus, and combined with work with their advisor, we'll be able to track students who have completed all the requirements.
What do you see as a benefit of a student getting the certificate? Do we know what the value of that certificate is?
That's a great question. We're not entirely sure how employers will recognize it, but it does take experiences that a lot of students were already doing here on campus and putting it into a package that they can show to their employer that they have thought about these things and they've gone beyond the minimum requirements for international engagement, international activities on campus. Hopefully employers will recognize that these types of skills are what they value, and the students will be able to translate their experience going abroad, learning foreign language, and their communication skills more broadly into the soft skills that employers want. I think employers just need to be told that students who do foreign languages, for instance, have worked hard on their analytic skills and their group problem solving skills, for instance.
There is a question in the chat that said, is there a minimum requirement for the length of the study abroad?
No, there's not a minimum requirement for the length of the study abroad. That's why we went with the term programmatic international experience. Maybe it's just a couple of days, but that's better than nothing. The more time you're able to spend abroad, the more advantages you will get from that experience. But we're not going to set a minimum. You just have to go. Hopefully, once you go, you'll be willing to go a lot more and able to go a lot more. And I should mention that at the University of Montana, there are numerous offices on campus that can help you with that programmatic experience if your major doesn't have it. So the International Global Engagement Office has many international experiences, and so does the Office of Career Services and Programmatic Experiences. If you want to do it, I think that there are funds available to help you do it and opportunities to find something that's really closely related to your major and your career interests.
Is the certificate already in place?
Yes, it's already in place, and we'll have students graduating with it even this semester. I think our first term.
Oh, that's great.
Many students on campus are actually very close to this already. If you look through your transcripts with your advisor, you'll obviously know if you've done 4 semesters of foreign language. The cultural studies requirement is often ex-gen ed, and we have numerous global and regional issues courses across campus in various colleges. And so you may have already taken one of those. The question then is, have you been abroad and done international activity? And then are you participating in events here on campus and in the community? You have time to track it and probably even finish the campus requirements, the activities requirements by the end of spring.
You could probably even just run a report somehow to see who's close to already
completing it. Yeah, I think we could do that with the language requirement and cultural studies requirement and the regional issues requirement. Just, we don't have a way to track campus participation or international activities yet.
One more question. How does the certificate interface with GLI?
How does it interface with GLI? Hopefully really well. So GLI is a wonderful program for doing a lot of the same things that this certificate is intended to do. The 2 main differences between the World Competencies Certificate and GLI is the language requirement. You have to do language, and then you have to go abroad as the other one. GLI you can do here on campus and really understand some of these global problems from a local perspective. We're hoping to encourage GLI students to add this and fill out the international portion of the Global Leadership Initiative, as well as the International Development Certificate or minor.
That's all the questions I'm seeing in the chat.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming. And if you have additional questions, you can write to me, brian.dowdle@mso.umt.edu, or contact the advising office in H&S. And I should mention that although the major or the certificate is housed in H&S, it really belongs to the entire campus. And so if there are any campus leaders watching who want to expand this and tailor it more specifically to other colleges, I think that would be a wonderful conversation to have. And we're all on the same page and wanting to help students achieve their goals to change the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the part of international education.
Are those additional questions or just people saying thank you?
Yeah.